Hey everyone, Rebecca here, Rebecca Cummings with Rebecca Cummings Yoga and Coaching. Hope you're all doing well. I've been really focusing on my master's program, so I haven't been making as many videos, but I'm hoping to start to get into a rhythm of that. And since I've been off of school for the last couple of weeks, I've been able to work more on my business and also just provide some free content because it's one of my favorite things to do. So I've honestly been feeling a little bit stunted in terms of some of the topics I want to talk about. And it's important for me to not force that, to not just like give out topics just because, I think they're a good idea and they're going to make everyone happy. I instead like to focus on topics that are really relevant in my own mind and heart and body. And something that I wanted to discuss today and talk about was how to work with being an empath or people who identify as empaths, and a lot of the rhetoric that I hear around how to take care of yourself as an empath. And if you kind of Google what it is to be an empath, I'll let you kind of do that search. But I find the topic itself somewhat confusing about what it is and what it isn't. And often empaths tend to be very highly sensitive too. So looking into some work around the highly sensitive person, and also some of Carl Jung's work around introversion and intuition. And so sometimes it's hard to kind of weed out like what is what. But the main thing I wanted to discuss in this is that in a lot of the empath circles that I see, and I bring this up primarily because I work with a lot of empaths, they tend to show up highly sensitive and empathic people in my personal practice, in my one-on-one practice. And people have told me that they consider me to be an empath and highly sensitive. And, in my own work, I do consider myself an intuitive, introverted, empathic, highly sensitive person. But I think that it can be really easy to see that as a hindrance. And what I mean by that is I hear a lot in the kind of empathic, highly sensitive circles around this concept of like, how do I protect my energy? How do I make sure I don't take on anyone else's energy? And what that's telling me when I hear that is that I hear a lot of, I'm just going to say it, like a lot of victimization, that somehow there's this evil world out there that I need to protect myself from. And it makes a lot of sense that that would be true for so many people. And I also think it's important to see being an empath as a strength, being a highly sensitive person as a strength. And I think too often, and I think it is a cultural thing because, compassionate, empathic people are often seen as being really soft and being doormats. So I think the first thing that when I'm working with people who are highly empathic, highly sensitive, is to really establish healthy boundaries. So one way that I have found in being an empath and being a highly sensitive person is that if I don't have boundaries around my time, my commitments to things, if I'm not clear about my yes and no's, that's when I start to feel really tired, really depleted. But when I prioritize my self-care, and for me that looks like writing, exercise, yoga, journaling, prayer, meditation, when I prioritize those things, I find that I really feel really strong because these are resources for me that help me to feel more like myself, that help me to feel strong. So this idea around when I'm with somebody else, I need to protect myself from their energy. I think when I hear that from somebody, what I'm really hearing is that my boundaries are weak. I feel disconnected from myself and who I am. I feel disconnected from my resources. So I think looking at the concept of boundaries, and that's a big thing I do a lot in my somatic coaching work, is having people literally feel where I end and they begin. And there's different exercises that I do with that, which many of my clients have found really, really helpful. But that's like a whole other video. But I want us to start to reframe in the highly sensitive, empathic community, however you identify with that, that this is a strength, this is a gift, and that you are needed, and that the way you perceive things is valuable, and that I think the primary issue around protecting energy is a boundary breach, is a boundary issue. So, and what's so beautiful as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, it's really easy to kind of, I have found, to tune into somatically and in my body when there's been a boundary breach. When I said yes and I really meant no. When I said no and I really meant yes. And so I think really working with our skill set, it's easier to see that it's easier to experience these gifts that we have as a strength. So, and then the other piece around when we're trying to protect energy, part of our work, and for many empaths, and this is definitely true for myself, is that we tend to get into helping fields, we tend to be healers, counselors, and actually that's a field where we feel like we can be most ourselves, where we can practice listening, where we can mirror back, we pick up on things that normally other people don't pick up on. Which is also a whole other video itself, because sometimes you can even see things before your client or another person is able to see them. So learning tact and boundaries around when to say something and not to say something is really interesting practice. But I wonder if there was a point I got on a little tangent with that, because I find it really interesting. I wonder if part of what I've learned in my journey and in my recovery and in my path is that my goal is not to avoid pain. My goal is not to hide from pain. And in fact, it's important for me to learn how to lean into pain, how to lean into suffering. But I can't do that unless I'm prioritizing my self-care and I'm having healthy boundaries with myself and other people. So, and I can feel it. I can feel when I'm with someone, when I'm with a client, for example, and I see that they're suffering. I'm witnessing someone suffering right in front of my eyes. When I'm feeling connected to myself, when I prioritized and kept, clear, healthy boundaries within myself, I literally feel like I'm just this channel in being with them, being in relationship with this person. And there's a clear sense of what the relationship is and what it isn't. And even if after they, leave my office or Skype session or something, I feel sadness. I feel sadness for what's happening with that person. It's much easier for me to let go of my time I've had with that person and let it be in the session, if that makes sense. So this is just a video to say that if you consider yourself an empath and a highly sensitive person, it's a strength, it's a gift, and you're needed. I mean, just look at this world right now. Look at everything on the news. You will see that we're very, okay, I don't want to go into like black and white thinking. I will just say that I think empaths and highly sensitive persons offer a gift and a strength and a wisdom that is needed. So, and really working with, and I just encourage you, focusing more on the boundaries themselves. So when you feel like you're losing yourself in somebody else and struggling with issues of codependency, to realize like, okay, this is a boundary breach, and anyone who's been recovering from codependency knows that. That's the first thing you learn is healthy detachment and setting healthy boundaries. But boundaries are not just around setting with other people. They're about setting healthy boundaries within ourselves, which was like kind of a mind-blowing topic for me when I first heard that I could actually have boundaries with myself. Wow. Part of having healthy boundaries with myself is when I'm meeting suffering and I'm leaning into that pain with another person. And I'm aware of, I have a good sense of where my body ends and theirs begins. That when that moment is completed, there's an integration that happens of some kind. And a lot of the somatic work, we do a lot of integration. When that's happened, I'm able to have the healthy boundary like, okay, the session has started, the session has ended. But this is not just, with clients. This goes with family members, with friends, with anyone we're in relationship with. So that doesn't mean like, and part of having healthy boundaries is knowing like these environments support my system, these environments don't. Like myself, for example, I know that I grew up in New York City, and I cannot stand Times Square. I just know like that's not where I want to go. I feel very depleted. I feel exhausted. And so when I go to New York City to visit my parents, I never go there. And let's say I have a family member in town that wants to see, the big epic tourist traps and things like that in New York. I don't go with them. So I just offer that as like a reframe. Like, okay, am I really taking on someone else's energy, or am I not taking care of myself? And so we can actually use our gifts and our strengths to evolve not only ourselves, but to support the evolution of other people. And I also think this ties into a lot of my Buddhist training too, is that it's important for me to learn to lean into suffering. And at the same time, it's not helpful for myself or anyone if I'm getting lost in that, if I'm trying to sweep in and save the day. And I think sometimes, and I have seen in Buddhist circles, there can be a lot of codependent stuff, and that's also a whole other video. But anyways, I hope you found this information useful. It's just been on my heart and mind a lot, and I'm hoping we can reframe this conversation for highly sensitive, empathic people, that we can look at, okay, is this really about taking on energy? And there is something to be said for that. Like, I love, when I go to a hotel room, I bring like essential oils of sage and rose water, and I spray it around when I'm in a new environment. There is something to that, but I also think we need to look at the boundaries first and the self-care first, and then see how actually, and I've said this a million times already in this video, that this thing that feels like a hindrance, that feels like nobody understands me, is actually our greatest strength. So thank you so much, everyone. Namaste, and I will see you soon. Bye.